How the future looks like? These are the 10 largest countries and their contribution to the world population. These are the in China, India, USA, Indonesia, Brazil, Russia, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Japan. And if you look at the contribution, what percentage of the population they are, China is 21% of world's population, contributing only less than 15%. India is contributing more than its share of the world population, 16.62, contributing 20.6%. And Pakistan has 2.5% of world population and contributing 5.2% to its growth. And that is shown here, that countries, India's share is so large because of the population, China, followed by China, then Pakistan. Pakistan is not the third largest country in the world, but its contribution is much, much bigger than US and even Indonesia. For example, these are the ranking of the countries, how many people were there in 1950, how many are there in 2000, and how many they are going to be in 2050. Pakistan, if the growth rate, current growth rate continues, Pakistan would become the fourth largest country, exceeding the population of Indonesia, Brazil, Russia, Japan, Bangladesh, and followed by Nigeria. So the growth pattern of the population, as determined by fertility, it becomes a very, very important factor in understanding the future demographic profile of a country. Thank you very much for bearing with me. You know, I covered quite a bit in this lecture. I started with some of the basic concepts of demography. What is the importance of age and sex in determining demographic indicators? I talked about age-sex pyramid, which shows the past and future potentials of population growth of a country. There are different kinds of pyramid. There are pyramids which are very wide at the bottom, very many young people, as against the pyramids which are wider at the older ages. They are more elderly people. Then I talked about different measures of mortality, crude death rate, which basically tells you how many people died in a population out of 1,000 in a year. But it's crude because it all depends on age. And when we look into the age factor, we calculated age-specific death rate, which tells us that there are different risks of dying. If a society, if a country has more people who are elderly, that society is going to have higher death rate. For example, Russia and Germany and Japan, they have higher death rate than Pakistan. And because Pakistan has younger population, there are very fewer people who are at the risk of dying. Then we talked about other measures of fertility, of mortality. One of them is infant mortality rate, because at the lowest stage, people are very high risk of dying, and that's why infant mortality rate in many developing countries is high, but some of the developing countries, infant mortality rate has been reduced substantially, for example, Sri Lanka. Then we talked about the different measures of fertility, but one of them is crude birth rate, which corresponds to crude death rate, how many people were born, how many children were born in a population of 1,000. When you know the crude birth rate and crude death rate, you can calculate the population growth rate. And then we talked about the specific measures of fertility, because fertility is not only dependent on age, it also confined to women, and even it is confined to ages 15 to 49, but women who are younger, they produce more children, particularly when they are in their 20s. So it is low before 20, it is very high in the 20s, and it starts declining once they go into their 40s. There are two measures of fertility which I talked about on the basis of age-specific fertility rate. One can calculate total fertility rate. That will tell you that if age-specific rate remains the way it is, on average, how many children a woman would bear by the time she reaches the end of her reproductive ages. So by age, and that tells you that that is a fertility rate, but it is more like a prediction, a projection based on the type grouping. That means that women who are bearing children in age 15 to 19, they are going to follow the same experience as those older to them. To overcome that, there is that was a period fertility measure, age-specific fertility rate, and then one has cohort fertility measure, which means the actual experience of women. And what one can do is to look at that how many children were produced by women who have reached their reproductive at the end of their reproductive ages. That's usually between ages 45 to 49, and that can tell you that what has been the average childbearing per woman. So on the basis of these fertility rates, one can project how the population is going to be in future. And as we gave you some example from Pakistan, and it shows that Pakistan is one of the fastest growing countries, not only in the developing world, but in many, as compared to many countries in the Muslim world. And as a matter of fact, if that growth rate continues, Pakistan's population will exceed that of Indonesia also, and it will become the largest Muslim country. Thank you very much.